Blake Grupe out the door, Cade York back in Louisiana, and there's something about the LSU Tigers season finale that just doesn't feel right. We're talking about that and so much more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to a brand new edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in as always. Make sure you subscribe to us today wherever you get your podcasts, and especially over on YouTube. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff today. More about what's going on with the New Orleans Saints and the kicker situation. We dropped the pod yesterday, and no more than a few hours later, it feels like lately we've been on a streak of, I'd say, jinxing things, because Blake Grupe is out the door. We talked about it on Tuesday, how he's got to go. He did not perform all that well with the black and gold, especially this season. It feels like every game, especially when they're at home, he's been missing a lot of field goals, and you can't be missing field goals inside of a domed arena. It's not a great look. So they let him go, and also I think they made the right decision, I think in terms of just the optics, and that is to move on from Blake Grupe and not go for Justin Tucker, who again had been suspended for 10 games and was reactivated. Mind you, not necessarily the best look in the world to get him aboard. And that we're talking about Justin Tucker. Great decision, though, I think, to get Cade York in-house. Again, this season hasn't necessarily been all that great, but at the end of the day, I think you got to take your opportunity to get this guy in here. He looked very good last season with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was 9 for 11 after starting 0 for 2 last season with the Washington Commanders, but he performed very well down the stretch. You need a guy that's consistent when it comes to kicking field goals. So he's a guy I think you could wind up using, and having him back inside the state of Louisiana, I firmly believe it's a great move. Did not expect to be talking this much this week about the kicker situation with the New Orleans Saints, but here we are, and I'm actually kind of glad things did indeed work out when it came to this, because they could have easily just done the thing that probably would have ticked off a good portion of the fan base. But they made the move and made the decision and opted to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and play this out. It was the right decision to choose the guy that they had. And I think, again, it's because of two reasons why I didn't want Justin Tucker. One was because of the allegations. It's just not a great look for your team, especially after it seemed like for a hot minute that the New Orleans Saints were going to go for Deshaun Watson during that infamous sweepstakes after he got suspended. And that led to the Houston Texans just cutting ties with him. And obviously Deshaun Watson move over to the Cleveland Browns instead. But even then, it just was not a great look optically. And also because Justin Tucker has been suspended 10 games, there's going to be a lot of rust to knock off. I think Cade York being back in Louisiana is going to be a good move, because he was really pretty good at LSU. Obviously, his shining moment was the infamous field goal against Florida in the fog, mainly because of the fact that a player decided to throw a shoe on third down, and that resulted in LSU winning a big ball game, and then Dan Mullen exiting stage right before too long. And I'm just going to say, I think that he's on the practice squad right now, but I would not be surprised if they move him up before the game on Sunday. You need a kicker after all. I don't expect Taysom Hill to be kicking field goals for this team. He's on the practice squad right now. Don't be surprised if he gets called up. So I think everything worked out, all things considered. And I feel like a lot of people are going to be okay with seeing the former Tiger, which is also just kind of funny in its own way, because it felt like for years, LSU players did not get picked up, did not get drafted, did not go over. But not long after Sean Payton retires and then moves over to Denver, the door is wide open. You saw guys like Tyrann Mathieu. Never in a million years did I expect to see him in a Saints jersey, but here we are. We're seeing more and more guys get picked up. Obviously, Will Clapp being an exception to the rule, but in Foster Moreau, another guy. There are guys out there that have performed really well for LSU over the years, especially over the last decade, and we're finally seeing these guys show up. Now, hopefully, one guy in particular does not show up anywhere near the team, at least relatively speaking. I think if Garrett Nussmeier winds up being a UDFA and you kick the tires on him, cool. But anything beyond that, drafting him in the draft, I definitely would not do that if I were the Saints or any of the other 31 teams in the NFL. But we're going to continue the conversation about LSU. Mainly because I thought about this while I was at lunch today. Is LSU's playing Oklahoma in the regular season finale? And it's just not right to me. Like, it doesn't feel right. And it's in the same vein that I've always felt like when Texas A&M made the move over to the SEC. And LSU wound up just kind of getting thrown in to a super manufactured, non-original rivalry game with Texas A&M. They played Thanksgiving night. I think they played I think they might have played like a Friday night game. But they played like 2 Thursday night games. I remember having to work those games. Long Thanksgiving nights. Thanks a lot, SEC. But it didn't feel like a true, honest-to-goodness rivalry. Mainly because LSU continually whipped their behind every single year. But LSU-Oklahoma just doesn't feel right as a regular season finale whenever you market it as the SEC in the world of college football. It is marketed as rivalry week. You've got the Iron Bowl, which obviously doesn't have as much, zip to it as it has had over the last decade or so with some infamous games. It's just not the same. You don't have that incredibly entertaining ball game with LSU Oklahoma, especially this year. I don't think any non-LSU fan is going to be tuning into that game. Not any non-LSU fan is just saying, yeah, Oklahoma's winning this one. We don't care. We're just going to enjoy the rest of our Saturday at 2:00. We'll figure something else to watch. But it comes right down to it. That said, I will throw in this alternative. And with the way things are with the SEC adjusting the schedules and LSU having 3 permanent opponents starting in 2026, and that is Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Florida, I think we need to have a serious conversation when it comes to the scheduling for the SEC. And I think it's time to bring back the old game at the end of the season. LSU Arkansas. If you had that ugly boot trophy, let's embrace that. Let's get these two together. Let's bring this back to about 15 years ago. I can remember the Black Friday games, LSU Arkansas, back when I was young adult teenager back in college, seeing LSU Arkansas, that history, the battle for the boot, having that be a Thanksgiving the day after, that's the way it should be. That's the way I think I want to see that return in my life, because we've seen it being played at 11 a.m. almost every year, because it's been kind of an afterthought. Because, put it bluntly, Arkansas, outside of whenever LSU would play them after the Alabama game early on in the tenure of Texas A&M taking over that slot, give me 9 times out of 10 Arkansas day after Thanksgiving. I don't care. I want to see that. I understand it gives off Jefferson Pilot vibes, but you can say the same about the 11 a.m. tradition game that is LSU Arkansas whenever it's thrown together. Just give me something different. And also, I'm going to go ahead and double down on that. I'd say put LSU and Ole Miss on Halloween weekend Arkansas and LSU Black Friday, and then figure out what you want to do with Florida. You can put them anywhere, and I think we'd be fine with it. Just give me that old school, SEC vibe, that energy with with 2 out of the 3 rivalries, because everybody wants to say LSU Florida's a rivalry. I'm like, I'll debate that with you till the cows come home. But it's going to be intriguing, to say the least, to see what they do with the schedule going forward into 2026. Just me firmly believe we should be seeing LSU Arkansas be a regular season finale. It's an old school rivalry. Not necessarily, it's incredibly one-sided. Don't get me wrong. Arkansas's only won 3 games since 2014. Seriously. And they've all been incredibly lopsided, except for this past season, 23-22. But that's just because this offense is absolutely putrid. Hopefully, Arkansas can make it a lot more competitive. But when you have, since 2014, 11 years, 11 matchups, you've only lost 3 times. And it was the tail end of the Les Miles era where LSU kind of phoned it in. If we're being quite honest, they phoned it in with those games because they lost Alabama and they kind of just mailed it in for the last 3 games of the season. They were still somehow were able to beat Texas A&M and somewhat salvaged the season. But then Ed Ogeron took over. They were just dominant in every single one of those games. 2021 was the rare misstep, but at that time, Arkansas actually wasn't half bad. They were ranked back when they had that matchup in 21 on November 13th. Seriously, I'm begging the conference, just make this the Black Friday game. And I feel like a lot of the fans would love to see that. And we'll wrap things up with a team formerly of the SEC way back, and we're talking way back in the day, and that is the Tulane Green Wave. They are still ranked. They were the one Group of 5 team ranked last week and heading into the final week of the season and their game against Charlotte. And there should be an absolutely dominant W for the Green Wave in that matchup on Saturday against Charlotte. That as of right now, the AAC championship game is the only thing standing between them and a college football playoff appearance for this lone Group of 5 representative. Now, again, they've got to deal with North Texas next week if everything kind of goes the way it should. And that's going to be a competitive ball game, to say the least. As of right now, all things considered, I think we do see Tulane, if they can hold on for this, they're going to go in to the college football playoff. That said, I think it's a lot tougher of a matchup to be against North Texas, who is 10-1. I feel like no matter what, whoever comes out the AAC, barring a collapse from North Texas this Saturday, for what it's worth, they're playing Temple, who Tulane was able to kind of beat down a good bit. They are going, whoever wins that is coming out of it the better, and also is going to be coming out of it holding that lone spot in the CFP for the Group of 5. Now, again, you got James Madison. They're dealing with Coastal Carolina, and that should be an interesting game. That's the only other real interest I think we have when it comes to who's going to be the lone representative for the Group of 5. It'd be great to see more, but we're not going to get that anytime soon. Unless they expand the playoff, which is definitely going to be something that people are going to be talking about over the next several weeks and months, simply because the ESPN has said, you know what, we're going to extend the date that y'all can make a final decision on expanding the playoff teams in the field. I don't need it to be a thing that's happening, but if they want to do that, more power to them. Do what you want. Like, as long as it doesn't affect what we do as a college football loving society, and we see more group of 5 representation, it's fine. But I feel like it's going to be used to see more SEC, Big Ten, ACC representation, and the group of 5 is only going to get one small piece of that pie when it comes to the Thanksgiving dinner that is the college football playoff. That'll about do it for today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to us today wherever you get your podcast. Tell a friend, tell a family member. Heck, if you're getting ready for Thanksgiving dinners, I'd say make sure you tell everybody. If you love sports, the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast is the place to be. Talk to you later.